You are on Messy in the Middle with Jeanie, and I am Jeanie, and I am messy, and I am in the middle. And I am sitting here today. I changed up the lighting from the last video a little bit. It's starting to get a little brighter outside, and so the warm mood lighting seemed less appropriate, so I thought I'd brighten it up some. I hope you can see me okay. I see there's a little reflection on my glasses from the video, and that's probably okay. I can see from a distance, like at a distance. I cannot see close up when I'm reading, and so um, the glasses are not really necessary when I'm sitting here talking to you. But they are necessary if I'm doing something that has any kind of detail. But I think mostly by feel and by doing a little trombone kind of movement with my crocheting, I can probably figure out what I'm doing. So I'll be all right. Um, so today I am talking about the third child to come into my life. So the third child to come into my life was my son Christopher. Now, the family joke is that Christopher is my favorite. I will say that Christopher is easy to love. He's always been adorable. He has always been pretty easy to get along with. And he's always behaved pretty well. Hasn't required a whole lot of getting after or um, redirection. And if he decides to be a little stubborn about something and you say, Christopher, now that he's older, he doesn't listen, but when he was little, that was terrifying. So, um, so it's when you have other children who are not as easygoing and not as obedient sounds strong, but not as willing to just follow expectation, more independent souls that like to forge their own path, as it were. They tend to feel like you are maybe that you favor the one that you don't have to get onto because he's actually doing what you tell him to do or what you ask him to do. And so um, I don't have a favorite with my children. I honestly don't. I love all of them so much, and they are so different. They are all their personalities are so different and special and amazing that I don't know how I would choose a favorite if I had to be fair. Um, I do have a soft spot in my heart for every single one of my kids. And um, yeah. Um, so, Christopher, I love you. I don't think of you as my favorite. My favorite is all of my children. I really love you guys so much. So, all of that being said, Christopher and his situation was a little different. So, um, my ex husband, as I said before, was in the Army. And, we had Christopher or we had Isaac first. And then were, um, we decided that I did, I mean, by this point, the whole like, I'm not going to be a mom thing, that ship had pretty much sailed. And I decided if I was going to have children, I might as well have them all at once and be a mom and do the mom thing. And because it's not my nature to do things really halfway. So, so I decided if I was going to do it, I was going to do it. And my ex husband was also wanting to have more children. He was one of four. And so he was wanting to have more children. So we conceived Christopher, and um, then shortly thereafter, he got deployed. So he was deployed to Afghanistan and then later Iraq. But when he was deployed with Christopher, it was Afghanistan, if I'm getting my timeline correctly. Uh, and I say deployed with Christopher. Obviously, Christopher didn't go with him. I mean, I was pregnant with Christopher when he got deployed, and I feel like I probably have that timeline incorrect. You'll have to forgive me. I would have to sit and think about it. He was deployed, I know that. And he ended up eventually being deployed. Yes, it was Afghanistan. Yes. Anyway, now that I've sorted that out in my brain, did you love watching that? It's pretty awesome. So he was deployed to Afghanistan. Um, I was pregnant with Christopher. I was due on my daddy's birthday. Actually, I was due a little bit, a few days after, but I was kind of hoping that he would be born on his papa's birthday. That's kind of a good present, right? And so and my oldest daughter was actually due right around that time as well, but she ended up being um, about 10 days later. So, because she was born on the 11th and my daddy's birthday is on the 2nd. So, anyway, so um, I was hopeful that he would be born on Papa's birthday, and my pregnancy went well again. I I promise you, I would not have done it 4 times if it was arduous and ridiculous. Some people's pregnancies are so awful that I can absolutely understand why they would not want to be pregnant more than once or twice. Um, Mine were not, and I was. He grew healthily, normally, um, had no issues. I was about 4 months in when I started bleeding, and I was um, reasonably freaked out. I thought maybe I was losing my child. And for any of you who've been through that, my apologies. I can't even imagine how hard it would be to lose a child before you even get to know them. I didn't lose my child until I had gotten a chance to live a really lovely life with him, and I feel like that would definitely feel like I got the rug ripped out from under me. Um, so um, I went to the doctor. They told me that what was happening is that it was what they call a blighted ovum. And a blighted ovum essentially means there was 2 implantations and one of them didn't stick. So the other one was fine. Um, Christopher was fine. He's here today. He's great. But the other one was gone. So he would have been a twin, which interestingly enough, I had said that when I got pregnant with him, I had said, well, I don't want an odd number of children. And the reason being is when I was growing up in both of my parents' houses, both my daddy's house and my mom's house, we were there were 3. So I had my biological sister and my stepsister at my mama's house, and I had um, my biological sister and my half brother at my daddy's house. So there was always 3 of us. It always felt weird to be there. I felt like there was always an odd man out. So I decided that I wanted to have an even number of children. So I knew when we had Christopher that that was going to be three. So we were probably, I would end up being pregnant again. Again, thankfully. They were pretty easy for me. Um, and so, but when I found that out, I thought, oh, well, gosh, if I would have had twins this time, then this would have been it, which I mean, would have been fine. It's not like I loved being pregnant. Again, I pretty much most of the time forgot I was pregnant. Um, but um, yeah, so that was an experience that I wasn't expecting. My life is full of those. That's why I'm doing these videos. Um, and but he grew normally. He was born um, cesarean as well. My ex-husband was still deployed when he was born, so he came home to a new baby a few weeks later. Um, Christopher was only, I think, 3 weeks old when I think he was only 3 weeks old when my ex-husband came home. So anyway, so we met him at the airport, and all the good things, all the like that you see in all the videos where the families reunited, and they still kind of choke me up because I remember the feelings that came with those days, because it happened more than once. So um, it was, uh, yeah, it's anyway. They still hit me in the feels, because I remember being those people, right? Um, Anyway, so Christopher grew. He was 8 pounds 10 ounces, so he was not too far behind Isaac size wise. Um, so apparently, breed huge children. If you saw my children today, the two biological children that I have that are actually the youngest in the line, but they're the ones that are my um, two youngest from my first marriage. Um, they are gigantic children. He is almost, if not quite, 6'4", and she is 5'11". So, yeah, large children. They started out big and they just went from there. So not all babies do that. I think that's interesting too, that sometimes they start out big and they don't end up being big people. It's weird. I don't know how that works. I'd be interested if somebody has any information on that and how that actually can happen, that a child can be born like, I don't know, 10 pounds and then turn out to be a tiny little skinny human. I don't know how that works. It seems odd to me, but Christopher was not. He was large from birth, um, and again cesarean. Uh, they he was born with what they call a fistula, um, which is there was like a little on his neck. There was a little right about here, right kind of where your collarbone is, right here, and that little dip was right about there. Um, there was a little like a pocket, and above it was a little skin tag. And so we just thought it was a skin tag at first. But when they went and looked at it, there was actually, like I said, what they call a fistula, which is just this little weird little pocket. He ended up having that removed when he was 2. Um, but he was born again, totally normal. He was in fact born on his papa's birthday. So I had told my daddy, I had called him and told him happy birthday while I was in the hospital and said, so I didn't get you a card or anything, but a grandson might have to do. He chuckled and told me that would be all right. So, um, he they it's fun that they have the same birthday. So um we it, everything went well. My friend was there with me. Um, my other friend was watching the other two. It was just when you're military, the families band together and help take care of each other because often one of the parents is gone, and it's not always the male, in the relationship. Sometimes it's a female that's deployed. And so then you have their significant other, male or female, they're just trying to figure life out. And at the time, when we were in Hawaii, there was a military husband that lived across the street. And when we were there in New York, um, there was a military husband that lived down the street from us. So it was not uncommon that the wife was in the military and the husband stayed at home. Um, wasn't as common, I will say that, but it's not uncommon. Um, and so, so anyway, so my girls helped me out with the other kids and with being there, taking me to the hospital and all the things. And I had my baby, and they didn't want to trust me that I knew what I was talking about when I said I was for sure in labor. If you're a doctor out there, please listen to your patients. They know things, especially when they've been through the situation before and they know what they're doing because they've done it not once, but twice. If you are an OB and your patient who has been pregnant twice before tells you they're in labor, I feel like it's pretty safe to trust that. They probably know. Just a side note. Anyway, she didn't believe me. Um, she had already sent me home once. I went to the hospital this time because I was like, I cannot, I'm definitely in labor and we need to take care of this. The problem was I wasn't progressing. Um, well, if you know how labor works, the contractions push the baby's head against your cervix, and that's what makes you dilate, right? Well, he was kind of crooked and he was into my hip, not the injured hip, the other hip. Not that that doesn't have its problems, but I digress. The contractions were pushing him into my hip rather than down because he was kind of crooked. So, if your contraction, if the baby's head is not pushing on the cervix, you're not dilating. So she's looking at it thinking, I'm not progressing, even though I'm telling her these are labor contractions. I've felt them before. I know what they feel like, and this is what is the situation. Um, she didn't want to believe me, so they had me um, stay there in the hospital, and they monitored me. They put the bands around your belly, all the things, and they monitored me for quite some time. They could tell that the contractions were not Braxton Hicks or false labor contractions or caused by dehydration or whatever else they thought they might be caused by. They finally did an ultrasound, and lo and behold, his head was in my hip. Not that I said that before, but I did say I was having real contractions and I don't know why I'm not progressing, but I know what it feels like to have a baby. So she apologized profusely for not listening to me. Let that be a lesson to you. And she said that he was into my hip rather than down, and that's why I was not progressing. No joke, huh? And she, so they went ahead and did the surgery and removed remove my baby. And so within, I don't know, when you have a cesarean, they make you stay for 3 days in the hospital because they want to make sure you're healing okay and all that. With my first one, that made sense. I didn't know what I was doing. I was going to be in a lot of pain and I needed to learn to manage that. I needed to get up and around, all of the things. With the second one, with Isaac, I was up by the second day. I was, I'll be fair, with the first one, it was like 2 weeks before I felt really kind of okay. With Isaac, by the second day, I was good and I was ready to go home. And I already had a kid at home and I felt like I needed to get home so I could take care of my kid. Um, Something that to kind of acknowledge in that is that with the first one, I had gained all of that weight and I was not healthy about my pregnancy, not as healthy. I'll say that, not as healthy about my pregnancy. I was healthy in that I ate good food. I did a lot of it. So, and I probably didn't exercise as much as I should have. My recovery from that first cesarean was long and hard. It took me about 2 weeks before I felt really comfortable, and it took me about a month before I felt in any way normal. Um, with the second one, by the time I was 2 days later, I was like, get me out of here. I am done. I've got this. And I think part of it is knowing what to expect. And also, I was much healthier the second time. I had not gained as much weight. In fact, I lost weight because I had all of this excess weight still left over from my first pregnancy. And um, Isaac consumed all of that extra weight. And I ended up losing quite a bit of weight. Um, and then with Christopher, same. I ended up losing um, the residual. Keep in mind that my first pregnancy, um, when I had my second child, my first child was almost 4. Um, when I had my third child, my second child was about a year and a half, just over a year and a half. So actually, let me think. Just under. Sorry, just under a year and a half. Sorry, it's early in the morning. So it was just under a year and a half. And so the time frame between the two um, was a lot less, and I had less weight to lose. And so I actually ended up losing weight when I was pregnant the third time as well. Um, anyway, I digress. So Isaac was born in 2003. Christopher was born in 2004. Um, then he grew like crazy. He was super easy, super chill. Both of the boys were super chill. By the way, Emma and Isaac thought that I had brought them the very best toy that could possibly be. Emma had felt that about Isaac. Now she felt like, oh my gosh, I got another one. She was so excited. And Isaac was so excited. He loved a baby from day one. He was very happy that he had a playmate. And so Christopher made it to about 7 months old before Isaac actually ended up in the hospital, and Emma ended up in the hospital as well. And that's a whole another video talking about that experience. Um, but so Christopher is was 8 pounds 10 ounces. He was cesarean. He was um, born in the heat of the summer. That was the one time I was grateful that I lived in upstate New York and it didn't get as hot as it does home. That's where we were stationed at the time. And he grew to be, like I said, he's almost 6'4", or maybe he is 6'4" now. I feel like he's continuing to grow, but he's 20. He'll be 21 soon. So he's 20. And guys tend to grow for a while, so he might still be growing. I think he'll hit 6'4" eventually. So he is, he was always very sweet. He was always very kind. He got picked on a lot and bullied a lot because he was sweet and kind. Um, and he, all of that, um, through all of that, he is still, um, it didn't make him nasty. Although I will say that now that he's a little bit older and he's built some confidence, he does sometimes act like a cocky 20-year-old. So, Christopher, if you're listening, I do notice, even if I don't say anything. I do notice that sometimes you act like a cocky 20-year-old, and that is okay. Um, but it's a rite of passage, right? That's how it happens. But he is in the Navy. He is serving our country as a Navy diver and is doing really, really well for himself as an adult. So, we'll kind of talk about more about him as I talk about experiences with my kids as they grow up and all of that. But yes, that is my Christopher. So, I hope that you have a really lovely day, and I will probably record another video while I'm still sitting here, still crocheting, sort of. Um, and but I'll release these over the next couple of weeks. But I appreciate you listening. And if you have any questions, as always, please ask.